People want to hear your story. They want to learn from you. They can listen, most likely, to 15 other podcasts that have that guest on there. But what they're showing up for your podcast on a weekly basis, on a bi-weekly basis, on a monthly basis, is for your take on it, is for what you bring to the table. And if you are looking to use your podcast to generate leads for your business, then you have to be able to educate your audience on what it is you do, how you serve your clients, and how they can get support from you. Welcome to another episode of Listeners to Leads, where I'm helping podcasters launch and maintain a lead-generating show. I'm your host, Alicia Galati, the CEO and head podcast strategist behind Galati Media, a full-service podcast management company. On this show, you'll hear my guests and I discuss everything it takes to launch a successful podcast and keep it running. If you're ready to get leads, land speaking gigs, and create deeper connections with your audience through your podcast, then this is the show for you. Today on the podcast, we are talking about the importance of having solo episodes. And you might be like, don't want to hear it, Alicia. I'm not even interested in what you have to say about this topic. I already know how you feel. Just stop talking. I'm going to say it again, all right? I feel the need to do a whole episode about this, which is bananas to me. But I think that it's something that is very important. So this might be a shorter episode. Most likely it will be. But I want to just kind of really bring this home for you guys, that there is such a difference when you show up for your audience with solo episodes. There is such a difference. I'm going to give you an example. We had this client. She has since stopped working with us because she felt that her podcast and her business were going in two different directions. Totally a valid reason to stop podcasting. So we split ways. There was no animosity, no nothing. It wasn't right for her to keep doing her podcast. And we agreed, yep, totally valid. Have fun. But while she was with us, she had such an aversion to doing solo episodes. And it was like pulling teeth with her. I was like, listen, you need to do more solos. And it wasn't so much about like, yeah, your audience needs to hear you. But when I was able to show her the statistics and show her what was happening in her downloads, like, hey, your audience loves listening to you. Also, you're more excited about sharing the episodes that you do. And so you're going to get more downloads for those. And that's what's happening. So let's do more solo episodes. It was a very easy sell once I showed her kind of what was happening in her downloads. So she went from a guest-only podcast to having a solo episode once a month and then every other week. And so like kind of increasing it as she felt more comfortable doing it. But when we looked at her top 10 episodes, this is what it looked like. The first one was her trailer. That happens, right? Every time. First one was her trailer. Number 2 was a guest. Number 3 was a guest. Number 4 was a solo. 5 was a solo. 6 was a guest. 7 was a guest. 8 was a solo. 9 was a solo. And 10 was a guest. So we're looking at a 50-50 split between her solo episodes being very popular and her guest episodes being popular. Now, for those guest ones, those tended to be more well-known guests, so they were able to share their episodes and get better downloads. But to have your solo episodes get almost as many downloads as a guest who is also sharing it with their audience is huge. That is so awesome. And it shows that your audience is interested in what you have to say. They want to know your story. You've probably heard me talk about my podcast about cults that I did with my sister for about a year. We have since pod faded just because it didn't feel like it was the right direction that we wanted to keep going, and life kind of happened. It was definitely a hobby podcast, so We still get messages. We still get downloads every week. There are still people who are obsessed with it, but it just wasn't right for both of us to keep doing it. Our most downloaded episode is the one where we share our story. The one where we talk about how we grew up in a cult. It's not the ones about other people's cults. It's not the ones about the most crazy ones that you could even think of. It's the episode where we are sharing about our journey. That is getting the most downloads. So that just shows you that people want to hear your story. They want to learn from you. They can listen, most likely, to 15 other podcasts that have that guest on there. But what they're showing up for your podcast on a weekly basis, on a bi-weekly basis, on a monthly basis, is for your take on it, is for what you bring to the table. And if you are looking to use your podcast to generate leads for your business, then you have to be able to educate your audience on what it is you do, how you serve your clients, and how they can get support from you. Take a look at the stats. Take a screenshot, send them over to me, and we can talk through it in DMs, kind of look at, does it make sense for you to do solo episodes? Do a couple solo episodes, feel it out, see how it feels to you. We had a podcast episode called How to Pick Your Podcast Format. That one's really great if you're not really sure if you want to do a scripted episode or if you want to kind of, fly by the seat of your pants. I do a mixture of the two where I kind of have some bullet points and some ideas and things that I definitely want to talk about during the episode, but I just kind of wing it. It's kind of like, okay, we talked about that. Great. And the bullet points kind of help me bring back to what was it that I was trying to say in this episode? Because I can get very distracted, which you guys probably already know. So take the time, look at your stats, see what they're trying to tell you, poll your audience. See what it is that they have questions about. And if you're looking for, well, what in the world do I talk about? Go back to our podcast content episodes where we talk about how to make sure that you are picking the right content. I also have a new landing page on my website under the resources menu where it says podcast content. So you can click on that and it'll take you to a page where it kind of talks through the membership. It talks through the top episodes where we talk about podcast content. You can click on those and listen to those. And it also has the Listeners to Leads challenge on there where you can get the pre-recorded challenge where you plan out 1 month of podcast content, marketing, and monetization. So there's a lot of different ways from free resources to paid ones that you can get support with your podcast content. I always tell people the podcast is going to be the first place to go and to get that information. And that way you can listen, take notes, take action, because that's what I want to see you do. I want to see you make moves and do the thing that we're talking about, which is more solos. All right, I'm going to end this with a story. I wasn't going to talk about this story, but I feel like I need to, so we're going to do it. When I was growing up in the cult, as well as before the cult, I sang a lot, and it was a religious organization. So I sang in church. I led worship service, played my guitar. It was a whole thing. And when I went off to college, I got really sick, and I got like really bad bronchitis or something where it completely changed my voice. Like completely changed my voice. And I went from being a soprano to then in the choir at the college I was at, joining the guys in the bass and the tenor. And I felt really about my voice. I mean, I went from like singing and playing the guitar at one kind of note and having to change it all to a different note. And that was really hard for me. Then fast forward to, I want to say like 5 years later, I was working in manufacturing, so with a lot of guys. And one of the guys looks at me and he goes, Alicia, you have one of those voices that makes me want to just punch you in the face. Really rude, right? Like, okay, screw you, dude. And my boss was sitting there. He's like, you don't say that to people. What is wrong with you? And I was at the point in my life where I'm quite self-assured. Obviously, it bothered me because it wasn't my choice to have this happen to my voice. It wasn't my choice to get sick. It just happened, and this is the result. I have a deeper, more resonant voice than I did before. I remember when I was thinking about starting a podcast, and I thought, who's going to listen to me? Like, Alicia, you have one of those voices that makes people want to punch you in the face. I mean, obviously this dude has like issues. Don't listen to him. But if I had let that thought or those thoughts or him saying that hold me back from starting my very first podcast, then I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't have the audience that I have. I wouldn't have the podcast that I have. I wouldn't have a podcast management agency. I wouldn't be doing any of this stuff. So whatever it is that is holding you back from showing up as your full self, put it behind you. Say, not today. We're not doing this. You are over there. You just sit your little tush down and I'm going to go ahead and do my thing and then see what happens. And I bet it's not going to be as bad as you probably think it's going to be. Do the thing, take action, get your voice out there, and say what it is that you want to say. All right, I hope that this was encouraging. Maybe it was the kick in the butt that you needed to finally do some solo episodes. If it was, hoorah, yay, I'm so happy. Send them over my way. I would love to listen to them and to be able to cheer you on. Have a fantastic rest of your week, and I will see you either in the membership or next time on the podcast. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Listeners to Leads. If you found something in this episode valuable, I would really appreciate it if you shared it with a friend who you know would also get value from it. Want to send me a message? My favorite place to hang out is Instagram. You can find me at alicia.galati. Let me know what your favorite takeaway was from the episode. And don't forget, turning those listeners into leads is actually easy.